All right, 32 teams, 32 shows, and honestly, we're pretty close to that, I think, Kelley.
Yeah, we are. We're getting right there. Oh, yeah! Let's head out to the Bay. 2022. What will the season bring for Trey Lance and the 49ers?
Well done, well done. They went 10-7 last year. They finished third in the NFC West. They lost in the NFC Championship game to the Rams, 20-17. Of course, Kyle Shanahan is back. Mike McDaniel at offensive coordinator, and D'Amico Ryans at defensive coordinator. So, Wes, let's start here before we talk about, who they brought in free agency, who they lost, what the draft looked like. I mean, everything is about, all the talk is about Jimmy G right now, what they're going to do with Jimmy G, where's he going to go. For all the talk, and listen, I am not a Jimmy G guy. I think he is far too conservative. I think that if you're trying to win a championship, he's probably not the guy in today's NFL to get you there. I think he is a guy that can certainly win you games and can certainly get you to the playoffs. Is that enough to win to get you through the playoffs? My opinion is no. That being said, for all this Jimmy G talk, they are 35-16 with him, and they are 8-28 without him.
Right.
So the numbers do speak for themselves. So my opinion really doesn't mean anything because the numbers, 35-16 versus 8-28 pretty much says it all.
Exactly. And look, when you can run the ball like San Francisco's been able to, I believe fifth in rush attempts, they were seventh in yards last year, fifth in rushing touchdowns. So when you can run the ball as well as they do, then, maybe you need that game manager type quarterback that kind of works with you. No, you don't necessarily have to have a gunslinger, I think. I'll be interested to see. I think the 49ers still are going to be able to run the ball, despite the fact that Mike McDaniel now in Miami is the offensive coordinator, and also Scangarello, the quarterback coach, he is now the OC at the University of Kentucky. So you do have at least a little bit of a new pecking order. Bobby Slowick will be the pass game coordinator. Brian Greasy comes out of the Monday Night Football booth to be the quarterback coach and to work mostly with Trey Lance. But we know Kyle Shanahan still pretty much calls the plays, even though Anthony Lynn is the assistant HC and will have at least some input. But Kyle Shanahan makes the final decisions. I still think this is going to be a team that runs the football well, though maybe using Deebo Samuel at least a little bit less, because I think that's why he was holding out and he got that extension. Maybe they promised him, okay, we're not going to use you too much in the running game like we did late in the season.
So we threw it up there, so we might as well talk about it real quick. There, take a little sidetrack here on the Jimmy G odds where he will play next season. Wes, 2-1 on the Browns, 3.5 on the Seahawks, 4-1 on the Dolphins, 5.5 for the Texans. Then we get into that 750 range, Giants, Rams, Bucks. Then we get the Bucks at 11-1, Saints 16, Falcons 16, and then Titans at 20. And people are going, well, what do these numbers mean for all of this stuff? Well, look, I think the Rams, the number shrinks on them because what if this arm injury that they're saying isn't as big of a deal with Matthew Stafford actually is a big deal. This team mortgaged it all to have a 3 to 4 year run.
Right.
And they understand in about 4 years this is going to be pretty rough. They have no picks, they have whatever, so they can't waste a year. If Matthew Stafford can't play this year, they can't waste a year. They can't be a John Walford year. So I understand why the numbers
sitting
are
him out for the preseason. I know we're going to talk to Frank Schwab in the next segment and talk about the NFC West as a whole, and that's obviously the most interesting question to go along with where Jimmy G is going to go. But staying on Jimmy G for a moment, I always thought that maybe the Texans made sense because of the relationship with Nick Caserio. He drafted him in New England. However, when you're looking at the Texans, if you think that this team is going to be bad, and they probably are going to be one of the worst teams in the league record-wise, they're going to be up there to draft a potential franchise quarterback here in 2023. So do you want to see, okay, what do we got with Davis Mills?
Yeah.
And that's why I think maybe you've seen those numbers drift up a little bit, even though there's a past relationship. It's like, okay, why did the Texans necessarily want to get involved with Jimmy G when they could maybe have a Bryce Young or a CJ Stroud next year?
I think that is a 0% chance for them, for the Texans with Jimmy G. That would make their whole plan that they have been orchestrated over the last 2 seasons would make no sense if they go out there.
At the worst case scenario, maybe Davis Mills shows you something and it's like, hey, maybe this kid's pretty good. And then all of a sudden we got a high draft pick. We could trade up or down or maybe focus on another need, which they have multiple needs down there in Houston.
So on the free agency front, they brought in Charvarius Ward to play corner for them. They brought in Oren Burks at linebacker. They brought in George Odom at safety. Tyler Kroft is there to kind of back up what you have with George Kittle. let's see, D'Amico Toure is a defensive lineman that they have. They have Ray McLeod that they picked up, Malik Turner as well, defensive lineman, and Hassan Ridgeway. Robert Kimdichie is also got signed. Now, whether he's got anything left in the tank, we shall see. It was only like $1.5 million contract for him. So all upside, really no downside for them in signing him.
Yeah, a lot of short deals,
Yeah.
really. Not a lot of long-term contracts. I know Ward got 3 years, George Odom from the Colts, a safety, got 3 years, but a lot of 1 and 2 year deals that you can easily get out of. So you really didn't see any seismic moves, I think, by this team.
On the out front, Laken Tomlinson, their left guard, is gone. DJ Jones, a defensive lineman, is gone. Edge rusher Arden Key, right tackle Tom Compton, edge rusher Kentavious Street, they're all gone. Cornerback Kawan Williams is also out of there. Raheem Mostert, no longer in town. Marcel Harris, a linebacker, and then Jaquiski Tart at safety is all gone. So, listen, while there's no huge names there, I think to the average kind of football follower there, Wes, I mean, Laken Tomlinson being gone, DJ Jones in that defensive line being gone, and even losing your right tackle and Tom Compton, I mean, this isn't insignificant losses for them.
No, there's going to be some retooling. I mean, I'm giving the 49ers the benefit of the doubt, like I did a moment ago, that they're going to be able to run the ball. They lost a couple running backs not there, but I think that they're relatively deep at that position with Mitchell and Trey Sermon and Jeff Wilson, Ushak obviously in the fullback role, JaMychal Hasty. So they've got plenty of running backs. They've got to do a little bit of retooling up front, but I think that they should be fine.
We are on the draft side. Of course, they were one of the teams that did not have a first-round pick. We had a handful of those teams that didn't have any first-round picks this year. So they come in the second round, take defensive end Drake Jackson with their second-round pick. Third-round pick, another running back, Tyrion Davis-Price out of LSU. So they took a running back in the third round. They had 2 third-round picks in which their second pick, they took wide receiver Danny Gray, who might actually end up seeing some time for them early on here. I think that wasn't necessarily what they were thinking, but apparently he has been looking pretty good in camp there for them. Offensive tackle Spencer Buford in the 4th round, and then a corner Samuel Womack in the 5th round for them. And so, the draft, I think none of the names or any of the names that people are like, ooh, and eyeing about or whatever. But listen, if you get a defensive end that's going to be part of the rotation there for you, because they already have an incredibly solid defensive line, you get a running back that can come in. We know, like you said, I think they want to run the ball. I think Elijah Mitchell probably leads the way there. But if you have a Tyrion Davis-Price as kind of the backup there to Elijah Mitchell, that's pretty solid. And if Danny Gray, who you get in the 3rd round, if you really liked him and is going to end up seeing some significant reps, then I think, look, your top 3 picks without having a first-round pick, I think you're pretty satisfied.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe Danny Gray ends up being one of your deep threats. He played in that air raid down there at SMU, so he's seen a lot of targets his way. This is a good receiving group. I think, top 5 to 10 in the league with Debo, with Danny Gray, Juwan Jennings, Brandon Ayuk, and, of course, George Kittle, still one of the best tight ends in the league. So they're going to be, I think, okay offensively. We know defensively they are elite. They are one of the better ones in the league. I thought D'Amico Ryans did a really good job in his first year as defensive coordinator.
I mean, this is the real question here, and we'll talk about this on the other side is Trey Lance, and what do we feel about him? How do we feel that this is going to go?
They've given him a lot of support. I mean, there are much worse situations for essentially a rookie quarterback that had 2 starts last year.
Yeah.
So still essentially a rookie quarterback, but there are worse situations around other guys.
Let's see at what Football Outsiders had this team ranked last season. We'll see some projections from them, from Sharp Football, from Pro Football Focus as well, and then we'll give you kind of how we might go about betting this team if we were going to bet this team at all. We continue with the 49ers on the other side. Primetime action continues here on a Wednesday. Matt, Wes, and Kelley talking the San Francisco 49ers, looking at some of the players that they brought in, some of the players that left, what they did in the draft, and now we take a look at where they ranked Football Outsiders last year, and I think this might surprise some people. 6th overall team DVOA in 2021. That includes the 5th overall offense, the 7th overall defense, and the 26th rated special teams. So you can see they'd be even higher if it wasn't for the special teams there, Wes. I think that with the way that this squad kind of finished up, again, only a 10-7 record last year, people would probably be like, are you serious? They were the 6th overall team DVOA. the defense was so incredibly good. And on the offensive side, yeah, they didn't really light it up all that much, but they were efficient. And I think that that's one of the things is just the efficiency metric of this offense is what really climbs the ladder for them.
Yeah, I think so because and you look, I thought they played very well down the stretch. I know they had that loss in Tennessee. I think that was a Thursday night game, but they won a couple close games. They won at Cincinnati in overtime. They won that game to close the season in SoFi Stadium. So they finished very well because they had a little bit of a shaky start when they were 2-4 after the loss to Indianapolis on Sunday Night Football, that rainy game that they had, ugly game for both sides. But they started to get better, I think, over the course of the season. I think it was really led by the defense, and it also helped that they found kind of a new weapon with Deebo Samuel in the running game. I know he doesn't want to run very much, and you don't want to necessarily treat him like he's Tyreek Hill or something where you're running a bunch of end-arounds and reverse handoffs, but you still, I think, don't want to totally dismiss that. I think it's going to decline this year, though, with the, Deebo obviously chirping about it and the fact that Mike McDaniel now down in Miami.
So 8.8 projected wins in 2022 here for this team, according to Football Outsiders. They have them in their 1 million simulations, 0 to 5 wins 11% of the time, 6 to 8 wins 34% of the time, 9 to 11 wins 39% of the time, and 12 or more wins 15% of the time. They've got them making the playoffs 48% of those simulations, so less than half the time. This team was able to make it to the playoffs, and sub 6% were they able to make it to the Super Bowl. With that, what they're looking at here now is a projection that comes out as the 16th overall team in the NFL DVOA, 16th offense, 14th defense. Again, that is 2022 projections according to Football Outsiders. If we go over to Sharp Football and we kind of look at this schedule, and it's up on your screen right now if you're watching along with us, it's the 13th easiest schedule in the NFL. And Wes, if we take a look, they need to win some games early here if they are going to, in my opinion, really make a run, because I think you can go ahead and kind of make a statement here when you've got games with the Bears, the Seahawks, the Panthers, the Falcons all early on in the season. Yeah, maybe you lose the Broncos and Rams, but if you're coming out of that 6-game stretch 4-2, I think with the 49ers, with a rookie quarterback, and kind of having to retool a little bit on the offensive line and all of that, I mean, if you come out of that stretch 4-2, I think you're feeling pretty good about yourself.
And I know those teams aren't necessarily great, but they're still road games.
Yes.
And if you go like 3-1 on the road, and maybe even steal one early with the Rams, keep in mind, we know Kyle Shanahan, even though he lost the playoff game, he still fares pretty well career-wise long-term against Sean McVay, and who knows what the Rams are going to be. I know we're going to get into that more in the next segment. And then obviously, that middle quadrant, or that middle third, rather, is the toughest of the season, having the Chiefs come in, going to the Rams.
And that's my whole point about it. They better book some wins early because you start week 7, Chiefs, Rams, in their bye week, Chargers, Cardinals, Saints. And what if the Dolphins are actually better?
Yeah, we got to think Miami's going to be at least solid on defense because we know that they can turn you over. So, and I think they have a pretty good secondary. And then you have Tampa Bay. Of course, Tampa Bay dealing with some injuries right now, mainly on the offensive line, but also looking up during the show at one of the monitors, receivers are all of a sudden dropping like flies down there.
I think I'm going to mark this down as one of those, hey, after week 6, look for an in-season under on the win total.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that is already in my reminders on the season, is to check what the in-game number looks like on this San Francisco team, because it is not out of the realm of possibility for them to lose every game from week 7 all the way to week 14.
Right.
I mean, it's not crazy to think that could be the case, because they will be dogs for sure. Chiefs, Rams, Chargers, depending on how the Cardinals shake out by then, they'll have DeAndre Hopkins back by week 11. So, I mean, it depends on what they look like. I mean, they're going to be dogs probably 4 straight weeks right
Yeah, and then you even go to the end. I mean, with Seattle, and we think Seattle is going to be bad. That's still a divisional road game, so those are never gimmies. You get Washington, who I don't have a lot of expectations from, but I expect that they're going to at least be a decent defense. And then you come here to Allegiant Stadium, week 17, to face a Raiders team that you know are going to be able to score points this year. I expect expect they're going to be one of the better offenses. Not sure about the defense as of yet. And then, of course, Week 18 against Arizona.
Yeah, Kelley, I'm looking at this team and kind of rooting for them early so that I can fade them late, because this 10 number, I have a pretty strong lean to the under as it is anyway.
Yeah.
But if I can get this at 11 or 11 and a half because they do start out 4-2 or something like that, then that is where I really, really, really want to come in and will come in as often as they will let me.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that. I can't imagine me having anything rolling in preseason bets on the Niners. It's honestly with the Stafford stuff that's been going on, we've talked about this multiple times over the past week, but it's just this division's becoming a little bit more tougher to figure out. I mean, obviously Trey Lance is rolling into an established team with a great defense. There's some weapons there. It's just all going to depend on him, right? It's another one of these situations.
Are they going to have him be baby steps early on where it's like, okay, we're going to run the ball early, nice, easy passes, short, intermediate routes. George Kittle's going to be your best friend. Look for him. Look for the guys like Ayuk and those guys in the slot. And then, as we go along, we're going to open up the playbook a little bit more.
Or who knows,
later
Wesley? The kid might be ready to go right now.
Yeah.
We don't know. We haven't seen him. You know what I mean? So that's where it's kind of.
So I don't want to totally sell him short here.
Right, exactly. And that's kind of how I'm approaching them this year, where I don't want to. They're a team I'm going to need to see first. But like you just said, Matt, if I'm seeing that early on and they're grinding out some wins over some teams that I think are pretty bad, then great. I'll jump in then and bet an in-season under on the win total. But other than that, guys, there's not much. Just because of the Trey Lance, it's really Trey Lance, but it's all the question marks there. There's not much preseason wise I have interest betting.
Yeah, I mean, if we do want to try to look at some positives here, right? Yes, Trey Lance is coming in. He's he has limited experience, so there is that going for him. But it's a 14th rated offensive line heading into the season, according to Pro Football Focus. If you look at what Warren Sharp thinks, he thinks it's a little bit better. He thinks it's like the 9th offensive line coming into the season. It's a very good tackle combo with Trent Williams and Mike McGlinchey. And if you look at Williams, he was actually the number 1 graded tackle out of 83 qualifiers last season. So you're talking about the number 1 tackle in football. That is certainly a big help to a young quarterback. No doubt about that. You mentioned the receiving core a little bit earlier, Wes. Yes, Debo's there. Debo's happy now. He got paid, so he's there. Brandon Ayuk, you've got George Kittle. That's a very solid trio right there. Now, what do you get from Danny Gray or Juwan Williams, as you mentioned?
Right.
So now, if one of those guys can kind of surprise, and you have you're 4 deep as far as like true weapons in this offense, that is huge for a young quarterback. So I mean, there is upside here, and specifically the upside being that maybe they're not going to be playing from behind all the time either, because it is a good defense and a really good defensive line.
And from an individual prop standpoint, depending, some books go deeper. Some books only go like the number 1 or number 2 receiver. But I would expect Juwan Jennings is going to take a step up here. Basically, he was drafted in 2020. I know you look at the numbers, he didn't have much, but late in the season, remember that must-win matchup against the Rams, 6 balls for 94 yards and 2 touchdowns, caught multiple times in each round of the playoffs before they exited in that NFC Championship game. So Juwan Jennings, they're probably going to try to get him the ball more. So Trey Lance, actually, when you look at it, he's got more weapons than I think he's been given credit for.
And if you look at on the defensive side of the ball, I mean, Bosa, Armstead, you got Jackson, you got Hyder. I mean, like there's a ton of different guys that they can rotate in through that defensive line. So, Bosa's going to be on the field as much as he can handle it. But outside of that, I mean, you've got a nice rotation of guys that you can have on the edge. You've got Eric Armstead that you can move on that can play exclusively on the inside now, where he's better anyway. I think this is going to be a pretty tough team to run it on, and I think they're going to get a ton of pressure on opposing quarterbacks as well, which helps a young quarterback, because if he's not playing from behind all the time.
And Warner, one of the better middle linebackers in the league, usually the middle linebacker for most teams, are going to call the defenses and call the plays on the field out of the huddle. So this is a guy that I think is a good leader on that team. The one thing that they got to do, I noticed on defense, even though they were very good, they get their hands in the cookie jar a little bit in that secondary, and I believe that at one point, I don't know how they finished, but they had the most pass interference penalties. I remember that Sunday night game against the Colts where they must have had it seemed like 10 pass interference penalties. So they can get a little handsy back there in the secondary, but I got to tell you, I was really impressed, especially with what they did at Green Bay up in Lambeau in the playoffs.
They paid Charvarius Ward a ton of money to come in and help out back there, so hopefully he can solidify that as well. Again, no preseason bets for me. Probably going to be looking at an in-season play on this team, unless Trey Lance looks awesome, in which case I will just back off and let them do their thing.
Visit VSiN.com to get current odds, listen for free, find showtimes, and download VSiN sports betting podcasts.